Hello and welcome, one and all, to another episode of Level 1 Adventuring. As always, I am your humble host and Dungeon Master, Wolfe Scott, and happy to have you with us once again. I'm going to quickly look over here at my performance mode to shut that off and make sure the computer doesn't melt. Hi, once again. If you are new here, new to us, new to this channel, what are we? What are you watching? Level 1 Adventuring is primarily a role-playing game and tabletop role-playing game centered channel, although we do play some video game-based role-playing games sometimes. You'll see everything on here from big group games that you're probably familiar with, like every Wednesday, or when we can on Wednesdays, we have an ongoing 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons campaign. Dungeons & Dragons campaign, that's hard to say. I should have done my my vocal warm-ups before going live. But those are Wednesdays, so you can check out some D&D if you are into that. Other nights, like Mondays and Tuesdays, we do something a little different. Sometimes it is a solo TTRPG, which that will be tonight. Sometimes it's a video game-based RPG like Solasta. So there's always a little something different for you to watch and sort of get involved in, learn about when it comes to the role-playing game space. If you dig what we are into and the content that we create, and there is something in my eye, please follow us on all the socials. We're obviously here on Twitch. You can check out all of the previous episodes of these playthroughs on our YouTube. And also on Twitter, where I post updates and drop some free TTRPG-based content every once in a while. So we'd be happy to have you. Join the Discord. So we meme, we talk about all the games we're going to play, or plan to play. And also we're going to be playing D&D there as a community very soon. A little Homebrew world, a little West March server, which will be very fun. So I hope that you will get involved. Big shout out to StreamLabs, StreamSpell, Tabletop Audio, AI Twitch Bot, all of the services that help make our Twitch a fun and engaging place for our audience to watch and be a part of. And I think that is all of the usual spiel. So we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of what we are doing tonight. And that is a solo TTRPG that we've been running for a couple of sessions now, called, and I'm going to use my solo stream. Perfect. We love to see it. Tales of the Burned Stones. So Tales of the Burned Stones. Without getting too deep into what Tales is, because you know we have some game we got to play tonight. It is a solo-friendly TTRPG. You can play it with your friends if you like. It is made by RPGs, who is a friend of the channel. We've played a couple of their games on here so far, including Firelights. It is based off of their Breathless role-playing game system, which is their own proprietary system, which they've developed, which is very intuitive and easy to learn. And the setting of which is a prequel for another game they will be releasing very soon called STONEBURNER. And it pretty much centers around a dwarven society which has fallen into ruin after a demonic incursion has split itself up from the depths of the world from a volcano, and now we're sort of trying to deal with the collapse of that society. In fact, this is actually hundreds of years after the collapse. This is like us trying to survive and some other supernatural hijinks taking place. We've been running this game for, I want to say this is going to be our 4th, 5th, or 6th episode. I'm like an episode or two behind in uploading on YouTube, so forgive me if I don't remember exactly which episode we're on. But we've been running for this game for a little bit, so we have a decent amount of story, established. But the main things you're going to have to know, if you are just watching, if you're just, picking up today. Let me go back to find, this is our character. Our character's name is Duragrim Feldeep. He's a dwarf. He's something known as a remnant. Essentially, remnants are undead who have been brought back to life after the demonic apocalypse by a mysterious coven of spellcaster witchy types called the Sisters of the Eclipse to some unknown end. And now the remnants are sort of cursed and indebted to hunt demons and try to expunge them from the land, even though they are, overrun. So that's kind of like who we are, what we are, why we are, right? Who, what, when, why, where. But let's talk a little bit. Let's do a brief recap of the last session that we did. so we have a better understanding of where we're heading into the session proper, right? So when we sort of last left Duergrim, Duergrim had been tasked by the Sisters of the Eclipse to claim a relic from the depths of, well, I should say the hellish depths of what used to be the volcanic tunnels of the old dwarven kingdoms, which have now been overrun by monsters. Found out that the entrance to those caves would be underneath a temple, but when he got to the temple, it of course was now unhallowed and corrupted by demons. Duergrim managed to sneak his way into the temple long enough to discover that there were some prisoners being held there, some dwarven survivors, apocalypse survivors, who were being held in this sort of like runic prison. And one of them was taken by a demonic guard to some unknown end, right? To some maybe sacrificial rite, we don't know quite yet, but was taken. We managed to distract one of the other demon guards long enough to sneak in and slay the last that was watching over the prisoners, which allowed us to escape with them. And on the way out, we sort of more or less promised the mother of the young dwarf boy who was taken by the demons that we would not forsake him. Obviously our goal was still to try to find the entrance to the caves in this temple, but, we said we would make sure if there was a chance to save her boy, we would give it a shot. But we had to lead the prisoners out before we could have a shot at that. So we led them out into the wastes outside of the temple and established a little forward camp. And when we did that, we had a very exciting series of events. Number one, we got ambushed in the middle of the night by a very unlikely character. Essentially, it is another remnant, another person like us, another person who was cursed with eternal life, an eternal undeath, right, from the sisters. But they were in a sort of fractured mental emotional state because, and this is a bit of lore that we kind of skipped over in the beginning, but it is important for this character now. The remnants have this ability to brew potions, much like witches do, to help them fight demons, but when they consume them to help boost their combat capabilities, we lose bits of ourselves. We lose our memories, we lose sort of like core facets of our identity and our personality. And obviously, if we drink too much of these reagents and we abuse this power, or if we're forced, to consume too much because of dangerous situations, then we essentially like shatter our minds and we lose what makes us us, right? So that's like kind of who we encountered. We encountered a remnant who had lost all semblance of self. They're operating on like sort of feral instinct, and they've been following us for a while. And now that we had a moment in the dust-caked arid plains of this sort of post-apocalyptic wasteland, had a moment to spring up on us and try to take, valuables from us. It recognizes that we're a remnant and that we probably have things it cares about, things like potion reagents, but doesn't, have the logic or the wherewithal to understand, like, not to attack people for them. So we got into a scuffle. We managed to subdue the remnant without, outright slaying them, which was good. And we bound them, right? We tied them up. But not too long after did we just survive that ordeal, was there a piercing scream from the lower camp proper, and as we investigated, we found out that one of the dwarves had murdered another one of the survivors, sort of in cold blood. And through some dialogue and some rolling on some random tables, we found out that this dwarf, who, did I write their name down when we last... That's the teenager. Did I write that? Oh, Morgath. Yeah, Morgath Stonebreaker. We found out that this dwarf, Morgath, even though he was escorted away with the prisoners, has sort of lost all hope that the dwarves will ever be able to break free of their sort of demonic fate, and essentially said, hey, if I'm going to deliver you back to the demons, right? And when I do that, they're going to reward me. So you can either join me and help me, you know, escort those who are defiant, and we can be, I'll put in a good word for you with our demon overlords, or you can resist me and I'll kill you, right? Which he had already done once. So we step in, obviously. We manage to break his sort of persuasive hold over the dwarven prisoners, get into a scuffle. This guy we do kill. I don't think Morgath was going to give us any mercy, so we did not return the favor. We killed Morgath, which, you know, allowed us to sort of settle the camp, rekindle a bit of hope, you know, amongst the refugees, but not without some... not without some consequence. So the main consequences being, we won our fight, but in the process we lost some reputation with the refugees, right? We kind of made a big point that as Morgath was battling us, he was bad-mouthing us, sort of calling out our thrall status to the Witches of the Eclipse, who were an untrustworthy sort of doomsday cult. Saying that we were, like, no better than, like, you know, the Demon Masters and all this stuff. So, despite the fact that we've saved these dwarves and we've got them out of this place, we freed them from, you know, this fate from Morgath, he has essentially fundamentally shaken their trust in us, and we won't really have their faith moving forward, right? So that's one thing. The next thing that we had to do was resolve a couple of advancements that we got. I had to look back at our previous level ups because I just looked at the rulebook again and realized that every time you get a level up, you can't get the same level up again. I thought they were repeatable. They are not. So I had to take stock of what level ups we did have, and I also got a new advancement, which was number 20. So I actually started keeping a tabs on all acquired advancements. So between everything that we got and should have got after doing some proper bookkeeping, we acquired a new ability, which was, what do we get? Trespasser, which is going to help us sneak around, which I feel like is pretty important given that we are trying to both infiltrate the temple once again, and we are trying to sneak into the Hell Caverns. So there's going to be a lot of snooping and espionage. I feel like Trespass is going to be very important. And we also earned ourselves a step up in one of our skills. So I decided to finally upgrade Willpower. I don't really know what is truly more optimal in terms of character building, if it's better to kind of go all in on one stat or spread it out, but I feel like the way that Breathless works, considering your stats get bumped down a tier every time you use them, like a die roll every time you use them, having just overall higher dice across all the stats is probably better, especially because to use abilities you also have to step down die, right? And so having more die to be able to step down kind of means you have a bit more flexibility with your skills, right? So that's what I decided. I don't know if that is the optimal way to build a character, but this is a solo game and this is my first time playing, so, you know, I don't know if optimization was ever going to be on the table. But that is where we left off. So if we check the to-do for next game, so we won our fight, but we lose reputation with the refugees. They see us now, which they're also abominations. And we need to have a scene involving the tied up empty remnant, right? I wrote empty and forsaken, so I'm gonna write empty here. We already resolved advancement 20, so that is no longer necessary. So let's go back to the quest, and this was our last. Oh, I have acquired these things twice. I don't need that twice, but I will add a page. So we're gonna say after slaying Morgath, right? This is post that moment. And what is our current? We got 28 in terms of text. Let's bump this back up to 28. Okay. So, transporting ourselves into the fiction, right? This is just moments after, well, actually, I think, we had disposed of Morgath's body kind of unceremoniously, so maybe we'll save, because we're sort of broken camp from the dwarves, the other dwarves for now. So maybe we'll save that for the morning. We do have to have a scene involving the Remnant, though, because we left him all tied up at our camp. Right now, though, our skills are really worn. Or are they really worn? They're actually not that worn. There's only one skip down. Maybe we don't catch our breath quite yet. Maybe we just go investigate what is going on. So, alright. Let's go back to the quest. So, we've disposed of Morgath's body. We actually found on Morgath a collection of herbs. Well, I shouldn't say herbs. They're from, sort of these plants which have been transmogrified by demonic energies, that they have developed new ways to live in this sort of hellscape. So, herbs is kind of pushing it, but it is a plant material that is poisonous. We did find that. Felspore powder, I called it. Extract from a poisonous plant. So we did find that on Morgath's person. So, what has happened? My brain. We're getting it back into the fiction. We have just slain Morgath. We've disposed of his body in the waste unceremoniously. We have found the Felspore powder on him. The camp is pretty riled now, and has to, dispose of their dead, which I don't think the Duergrim would want to get directly involved in, seeing as, the people sort of started eyeing him with a little less trust after all of Morgath's harsh statements. So perhaps instead of trying to insert himself into their burial rites, right? What place has he to oversee, their funerary service? Let them handle their dead as he handles his dead, and sort of he figures they can reconvene together in the morning once everyone has time to rest, sort of catch their breath, no pun intended for the Breathless system, get their wits about them before trying to, make any bold, sweeping decisions in a very peaked, high-intensity emotional situation. But there is a remnant, an empty husk of a remnant to deal with. So I say we march back, and the thing is right where we left him, right? This is my little cheat sheet right here. This thing is right where we left him. We left him bound, so I imagine, our fire is burning low. No one has had a chance to stoke it for quite some time. And as we trudge our way back up the hillside to where our sort of little scout position was overlooking the ruins where the larger dwarf party had built their camps, we can see the dwarven, the remnant, the husk, sort of lying on their side near the fire, facing it, staring at it with these sort of wide, blank eyes. Remnants, because they are dead, are like sort of naturally cold, so I don't think that it feels, and they're heat resistant. That's another thing we determined from the remnants. They're heat resistant to help fight demons. So I think, the remnant, because it does not feel heat like a normal mortal being does, and also its mind isn't entirely fully in control. Like, they're not in control of the faculties of their own mind. It's probably sitting uncomfortably close to the flames, like face first near the embers, just staring, no sweat. Just sort of like really shallow, heavy breaths. Just like staring at this fire as if mesmerized, right? There's something about a fire that registers in the deepest recesses of its memories, but to what purpose is like kind of lost on it. So I think Duragrim, what is Duragrim gonna do with this thing? I don't know. I think it may be beyond the point of diplomacy, of interaction, but I suppose he should try, right? I think there's a part of him that sees within this empty remnant a sort of possible very dark future that he himself could fall prey to, and because of that, I think there's a part of him that wants to believe that it can be reached. Somehow it can be reached. So we're gonna do it. We're gonna do a check here. So we pick a skill or an item and then roll its die. If an ally helps you, they may also make a check but share the same risks. Take the highest die and interpret the results. Okay. So what skill are we gonna use for this? Well, I feel like it's probably a good thing that we just upgraded our willpower, because I feel like that is the skill that probably makes the most sense in terms of trying to converse with the remnant, the empty remnant. A, because it probably takes a good deal of willpower to sort of summon up the courage and the strength to speak to this thing that like deeply unsettles Duragrim, given what its hollowed state sort of represents for him, and also the willpower it would take to even try to hold a conversation with this creature, given that it is almost entirely feral at this point and not really cooperative in terms of like intellectual stimulation. So we're gonna roll a d6. Ooh, a 6. That is actually very good. You greatly succeed. So what does that mean? All right, so we approach, this has to be a bigger text. We approach the empty remnant, who is staring at the fire intently. And very sort of quietly, not over shoulder, we're on the other side of it, we're watching it from the front. So we want to make our presence kind of known. We don't want to come off as a threat, especially after the last fight we had. So Duragrim, sort of approaches, hands up. I hope I haven't found you at a disadvantage, and like trying to, be diplomatic. And as soon as he opens his mouth, the creature, the empty remnant's eyes crack open, and sort of immediately realizes that it's not alone and recognizes this thing that it just wrestled, and begins to struggle against the bites, and sort of like pounding its like arms against the ground, trying to break free. I know, no. Don't struggle, don't fight it. I mean you no harm, please. Just listen. And, the creature continues to for like a little bit, but, as we're sort of lowering our hands, no reason to fight. We begin to see a sort of calm, a malaise, sort of roll through the creature's body. Still a little on edge, but not actively trying to resist. as Duergrim slowly approaches, and perhaps watching us even get nearer, the creature scoots back even more so, and Duergrim says, "There's no need to squirm, no need to roll. I just want to speak to you, if I can, if you let me." And once again, the creature just breathes heavily. Duergrim kind of settles by the fire, lets a moment of quiet settle over the camp between them, before casting a long, knowing gaze down at the being, and says, "I don't know if you understand me, but my name is Duergrim Feldy. And I know you. I know you perhaps better than you know yourself right now. You're a remnant, like me. You are a servant to the Sisters of the Eclipse. You faced terrible odds and have found yourself in a twisted fate. You suffer, I know you suffer, for I suffer the same. I don't want to hurt you, I don't want to scare you. I just want to know if there's someone inside you." Hey, Fleetwood! Thank you so much for joining us, Fleetwood. Hey, friend, thank you for the 5 months. Appreciate you. Thank you for letting that guitar solo screech into the stream. It says, "I don't want to hurt you. I don't want to scare you. I just want to know, is there someone in there I can talk to? Someone who understands what I'm going through. Do you have a name? Will you share it with me?" And there is... Do we have a name generator? I feel like we should have a name generator in here. Alpha clans, dwarven houses. Yeah, there's dwarven houses. Are there dwarven names? That would be cool. I would love to randomly generate a cool dwarf name. We got, we do have, let's say, at Beans, give me the name of a dwarf hunter who is surviving a hellish apocalypse. We can use our favorite AI, well, we are Grim Ironhide. Our name's already Duergrim. How about another? How about another? Let's see what our little... Ragnar. Okay, that's new. Ragnar. Not to be confused with Trogdor. Trogdor! Trogdor was a man. Maybe he was a dragon man. Maybe he was just a dragon. Sorry, that's some way early 2000s humor for you. For anyone who's familiar with that internet phenomenon. Anyway, so Duergrim tries to beseech, the better aspects of the empty remnant before him. And there's sort of a long pause as this sort of desiccated, ragged, knotted beard down to his ankles, sort of figure, just sort of stares blankly, breathing for this uncomfortably long amount of time. And there's, a sort of a wash of disappointment falls over Duergrim as he believes that there's no reaching, you know, this man that he has been fully broken by his overindulgence of the Sisters of the Eclipse magics. And Durgrim lets out a sigh. Aye, that's what I thought. And before he can really finish his sentence, from across the fire, you hear, Ragnar! Ragnar! And Durgrim's eyes, you know, sort of peek up. What did you say? Ragnar! And sort of like the creature's in his binds, and can't really fully use his limbs, but you can see just the tips of his fingers from underneath the ropes are sort of tapping on his chest. And you know, eyes wide, sort of emphatically, Ragnar! Ragnar! And Durgrim sort of jolts up in surprise. Your name? You speak your true name. You are Ragnar! Ragnar! You do understand me. And there's sort of like, you know, a bewilderment and excitement pulsating through Durgrim's cold veins. And almost instinctively, he wants to approach Ragnar and free him, but almost just as quickly, you know, does Ragnar's fight or flight instincts kick in. And seeing Durgrim sort of quickly approach him not too long after their fist fight, Ragnar, you know, scoots backward, tries to struggle against his restraints, and like leans down and tries to gnaw through one of the thick ropes with, like, you know, his missing teeth. Ragnar, no, listen. I mean you no harm. We got off on a rough start, I'll give you that, but I don't want to hurt you. I want to free you. Aye? And if you promise not to try and throttle me or bite me or crack open my skull in my sleep, I can unbind you. We can get on like a proper pair. If you don't try anything tricky, you hear? And Ragnar, sort of eyes wide, only looking as though he's processing about half the words, sort of nods his head and just taps his fingers on his chest. Ragnar. And Durgrim, not entirely appeased by what is happening, but maybe operating with a bit more faith and hope than logic, you know, slowly approaches Ragnar and, you know, swings over the axe gun from over his shoulder. Don't make me regret this, Ragnar. He, like, curses under his breath as he runs the blade across the ropes, and, you know, lets loose one of the knots as the binding sort of give free off of Ragnar's body, and almost immediately Ragnar jumps up and throws himself against a stone, sort of like in a defensive fetal position, but still keeping his knuckles forward as if ready to box if anything should, you know, go sideways. And yeah, Durgrim backs up, you know, wanting to give Ragnar space, not wanting to threaten an already startled a being, as slowly walks back towards the fire, takes a seat, lets some air between the two of them until Ragnar's fists slowly lower down to, you know, sort of grabbing his knees and keeping them close. And Durgrim... Oh, do I have the ability... If I look at my skills... When you try to achieve something out of the ordinary by drinking one of your concoctions, you may immediately roll excellent position. Huh. I feel like if I try... Because the whole thing we said with the potions is if they drink a potion, then they sort of lose a piece of themselves. So I'm thinking, like, could Duergrim make a potion that kind of returns some of Ragnar's faculties to him long enough that they could have a sort of more worthwhile conversation? But I don't think that Duergrim would want to do that, because that would force Ragnar to lose control of more of his mind and his memories, which is kind of what got him here in the first place. So I don't think that is the way forward necessarily. But I think what Duergrim will do is simply let Ragnar huddle in the corner and just sort of soundlessly begin to make some rations, right? Make some food, something simple. You know, we're talking about a person who travels in like a hellscape wasteland, so this isn't probably very tasty food, but it is probably enough to provide the unlife-sustaining nutritional value. Actually, because they're undead, do they really need to eat? Perhaps it's just like fuel. Like, they don't take any pleasure from it, but it just like locomotes the body, right? But you know, just starts preparing something simple. I'm curious. Let me go to the Sparks table. The Sparks table is what allows you to sort of generate some ideas on the fly. So if I roll 2 and a 2, which is family, and I'm going to roll 2 and a 2. I literally rolled another 2 and a 2. Serve family. Interesting. Serve family. You know what I'm hearing from this? Empty remnant is able to be communicated with. I wanted to generate a sort of a conversation that, you know, they may be able to have, you know. And we do know that in life, Duergrim was a noble. Duergrim was, you know, a high-ranking dwarven individual who was eventually ousted from his hold by his brother. And that is sort of how he was exiled, and not at the site of corruption when the demons came. It kind of spared him momentarily, but, you know, was sort of the ultimate fate for his family. When I hear serve family, I kind of am thinking that maybe Ragnar is as old as Duergrim, and perhaps was one of Duergrim's, like, attendants, you know? Like, served Duergrim's family back in the day. Obviously, a lot of time has passed, and neither of them would have thought they would be where they were here now. But that is really interesting. So perhaps, you know, Duergrim is making some simple gruel, and Ragnar is watching with like a very vested interest, and with a far more canny gaze than he has been since Duergrim has interacted with him. And once Duergrim has finalized preparing this sort of like meager meal, he gets up and he slowly, you know, begins to put down a bowl in front of Ragnar, but in so doing sort of leans over. And we had talked about how that Duergrim has a locket around his neck. He has a past memento. He has an engraved golden effigy of his like family's crest, and on the inside is a picture of his wife and his daughter, Thrilrain and Throri. So as Duragrim is leaning down, his medallion sort of like slips out from underneath his beard and his breastplate, showing the insignia, the family crest of the Fell Deeps. And when that happens, there is a flash of recognition from Ragnar. And Ragnar almost like excitedly leaps forward with his gnarled hands and like tries to paw the amulet. And with swift instinct, does Duragrim sort of bop away the hand and rush backward and like throw his hand behind his back as if trying to grab for his axe gun, not expecting the swiftness and the sudden grabbiness of Ragnar. But as he backs up, Ragnar doesn't pursue, and you can see is holding his hand still in midair as if like in this sort of supplicative gesture, and almost like bowing his head. And Duragrim's sort of own head tilts to the side, waiting for something to happen, but nothing does. Ragnar, you're alright, you've collected yourself, are you? You're all fine? And without sort of lifting his head, Ragnar keeps his hands up and says, "Fell Deep." And, suddenly a light bulb goes off in Duragrim's head as he tilts his head to the side. "What did you say?" "Fell Deep. Clan Fell Deep." And like slowly raises his eyes, still sort of holding his hands up as if like, not at ease, almost like at Duragrim's mercy. And Duragrim is almost speechless, right? Sort of the wind knocked out of him. He hasn't heard someone evoke his old family name since, I don't know, hundreds of years ago, before the time of Mount Baram's eruption. And says, "Aye, that be my family name, Felldeep. How do you know?" And at this point, Ragnar raises his eyes and then takes his hands and presses them against his chest in like a different way. Before it was sort of like, I am Ragnar, right? Like, this is my name. This is a word I recognize. Me, like almost like me Tarzan kind of a moment. But instead, he sort of clutches his hands over his chest, as if like recalling something fond, as if recalling something dear, right? And sort of tilts his head to the side, and in this almost sort of like longing, reverent tone, says, "Fell Deep. Serve Fell Deep." And many of Duragrim's memories have been lost to time and through the imbibements of the Sisters of the Eclipse potions and like the wear and tear of ages. But it is in that moment, with that slight tilt of the head, with that sort of reverent tone, it's almost like in his mind's eye, Duragrim can wash away the dirt and the grime and the overgrown beard and the battle scars and the cold dead blue flesh, and like peel away all of those features that have changed since the eruption of Mount Baram, and he sees before him Ragnar Stonefist, one of his most loyal attendants, one of his, what would we say that Ragnar was? Maybe like, almost like a housecarl, you know what I mean? Like if we're going Skyrim, right? Sworn to carry your burdens kind of thing. Would be at his side, help run errands, be sort of like his shield arm if it was needed. This was an honorary title that was bestowed upon Ragnar for, you know, service to Duragrim's family. For years he held this position, probably even after he was excommunicated, even after he was exiled and his brother sort of like usurped his post. Duragrim's brother usurped his post. And I think that's like, you know, something that Ragnar personally never agreed with, but like, what do you do when you're assigned to the family? You know what I mean? Like, he wasn't sworn to Duragrim specifically, he was sworn to the Fell Deeps, and when Duragrim was exiled, he was not beholden to follow him into exile, he was beholden to keep with the family. And so, yeah, I think there is this sort of pang of recognition, and Duragrim just sort of falls to his knees as, like, that vision leaves his mind, and he now sees Ragnar for who he is and says, Ragnar, by the stone, it can't be you. And sort of like puts his hands forward, and Ragnar just smiles this like dopey, half understanding kind of toothless grin, and just takes the hands that are on his chest and like puts his hands on Duragrim's like meaty palms and just repeats, serve Fell Deep. And you know, I think there is a welling of emotions. This is sort of reconnecting to a part of Duragrim's identity and history that he thought long dead, that he thought would never resurface, that was sort of forever lost to, you know, the tragedy that has befallen the Dwarfholds. And I think there is, like a genuine sob, you know, that just sort of escapes from, like, just this rock in Duragrim, the back of his throat, that he's trying to swallow, before finally, you know, it just sort of, like, overwhelms him, and he just sort of, like, is clasping Ragnar's cold hands, and just says, Ragnar, oh my, it's good to see you, brother. And just sort of like, brother in sort of like a honorary sense, not like in a familial sense. And like finally just sort of like lets some tears fall and like leans forward, and Ragnar doesn't really know how to react. He only sort of is half remembering the importance of Duragrim. He just sort of remembers that he's supposed to serve, he's loyal to this name, this symbol, but the nuances of it, the specifics on it are kind of lost on him. But like as Duragrim sort of collapses forward into Ragnar, Ragnar just sort of like doesn't quite return the embrace, but just, you know, supports Duragrim. Just as if like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to do. He's leaning forward, he needs support, here I am. And just kind of like stiff bodies, and just like keeps the hands held, but like make sure that Duragrim doesn't, you know, collapse forward. And just sort of, just idly sort of repeats, serve Fell Deep. Whoa, change the RGB lights. It's been a while since we've had someone redeem one of those, Fleetwood. I would love to do that for you. Let me take a look at, whoa, I'm getting a whole bunch of notifications on my phone the moment I pick it up. Let's find purple. Oh, what's Starlight? Starlight's kind of purple. I would like something even more purple, if I can find it. I would like something supremely purple. About Nebula. Ooh, Nebula's a little more purple. How's that look? Or is it not even... Did you not change? You fool? Nebula. I think this one needs to be a little bit more. This one needs to be a little bit more. And this one needs to be a little bit more. It's really hard to see for some reason. It just looks gray. Oh, maybe because... There we go. I bet you that's it. I bet you that's why. There we go. There's some extra purple. That's what the gang wants to see. More purple for you and me. Perfect. Love it. I was like, why isn't that changing? Now I know why. And I will put that on performance. So thank you so much for adjusting our purple scene. So this is interesting. So we kind of have this like helper character, which I don't know if there's like a specific rule. Oh, there's names right here. Ah, I knew there was names somewhere. I mean, I don't really know how like, do we just treat it as another character? Or is there like special rules for allies? It does say when an ally helps you, they also make a check, but they share the same risk. An ally helps. We just have the allies make checks and they share in risks. So perhaps we just roll like a little secondary character to help us in our battle. Oh, there is a guardian. Interesting. Okay. So, all right, let's go to Duragrim. Let's go. We're gonna add a tab. Add page, and we are gonna say Ragnar Stonefist. So Ragnar has skills just like Duragrim does, right? Now his skills will be a little different because they're base skills. We've had a couple of upgrades and things of that nature. Loot should remain the same. Grit will remain the same, but the base stats will be different, right? So the base stats, when you create a character, you get a D4, a D6, and a D8. So yeah, I think Ragnar's will is a D4 because his mind is essentially broken. Oh, Vinny Vici subscribing with Twitch Prime. Thank you so much, helping us hit our subscriber goal for, well, I was gonna say the month, but that's just been pretty constant, so thank you so much. I think his strength is probably his highest, right? Because he's sort of like operating as this like feral animal kind of person. And he probably has a D6 of dexterity because that is the only other thing that he can have. Now, when it comes to his abilities, oh, he gets to roll a weapon. He starts with a D6 main weapon. Main weapon. I'm gonna say he probably just has like a club. Like, he probably just has like a simple club. Because he's kind of just been wandering the wastelands all this time. And now we need a weapon. Well, I guess also, could a weapon be just fists? You know? Because like they could still step down like an actual weapon can. Like an unarmed strike is a weapon, you know? Maybe. We'll see. We're gonna give him the ability Protector, which says you may put yourself between someone and an imminent threat in order to safeguard them. I think that's fun. You know, it's kind of like he remembers that he used to serve Duragrim, and so he replicates that behavior, even though his mind is like a little jostled, right? I don't know if we'll use his grit, his loot, or his journey die very much. But I think what we can probably do is substitute a lot of his rolls for our rolls during combat or like challenges and things like that. That's how we'll represent him helping, right? Because they all step down no matter what. This is going to be very interesting, managing the side character. But I kind of like it. It's an interesting twist. And then he needs one other thing we have to check. Oh, we have to check the base health he starts with. Roll 1d4. Oh, I just think I took the average, which was 1d5 plus 7. Yeah, so 7 would be the base resilience that he starts with. So we're a little tougher than a base Ragnar. So yeah, I think Duragrim allows a moment where he just sort of sobs, allowing himself to be propped up by Ragnar, letting memory sort of flood back to him, and, you know, sort of peels back off of Ragnar. Also, we described earlier that I don't even really think that Duragrim can cry in the traditional sense, because he doesn't even bleed, right? They're just sort of like dust and smoke that rips out of his like undead wounds. So like these are all dry sobs. These are all like dry, you know, grinding sort of heaves and sobs that are coming out of his body. But eventually he sort of peels back and sort of puts his hands on Ragnar's shoulders. And says, "By the stone, Ragnar, it's good to see you. How did you find yourself here? How did you fall so far, my friend?" And like is trying to converse with Ragnar, but Ragnar's arms is sort of like limply hanging to his sides, or actually no, his arms reaching forward and just like putting a palm on the amulet on Duragrim's chest. Just sort of once again smiles sort of warmly at Duragrim and says, "Serve fell deep." And it's just sort of like parroting back the few things that he remembers. And at that point there is sort of a deep disappointment, you know, once again that sort of rolls through Duragrim as he realizes that although he's been reconnected with Ragnar, this is not really the same person he remembers. Time has been very unkind, and although there are shreds of Ragnar that remain, you know, he is still very much, parts of him are still very much lost, and he's not really going to be able to reconnect with him in the way that he wants. And I think Duragrim will like hang his head for a moment, and then look back up and sort of lock eyes with Ragnar. That's with an intensity that I think even through Ragnar's muddled thoughtlessness piques a sort of intense reaction, you know, sort of like locks eyes with him as Duragrim says, "I don't know if there is a way to peel back the curse that has taken your mind, Ragnar. I fear that perhaps your mind is beyond salvation, but by the stone and on the stone, if there is a way to purge you of this mindlessness, Ragnar, I will find it. If I have to grab the witches of the Sisters of the Eclipse by their collars and shake them and rattle their bones myself, I will find a way. Do you hear me, Ragnar?" And Ragnar, just sort of staring back idly, nods his head, but mostly just because Duragrim is also nodding his head as if trying to affirm Ragnar, and Ragnar is simply mirroring the images. "Ragnar, Sir Feldeep. Aye,
Ragnar served Feldeep, and Feldeep will protect Ragnar. Aye?
And Ragnar just sort of, once again, gives a toothless, wide grin and nods. And Duergrim knows he's probably not going to get much further with this, and also returns a nod, leans down, grabs the bowl of meal and gruel that he tried to hand Ragnar before, just a few moments before all of this new information fluttered to his mind, and then hands it over in his direction.
Well, enough of that for now, I guess. Eat. Find your strength. We march into danger tomorrow morn.
And Ragnar sort of hungrily and almost like half hearing Duergrim just sort of grabs the bowl, leans forward, still almost like an animal guarding its food, almost like wrapping his limbs around the bowl, keeps it to himself, then begins like shoveling sort of handfuls of food into his maw, getting it all mussed in his beard with sort of reckless abandon. And Duergrim releases a heavy sigh, watching this man who once carried himself with such noble bearing and honor sort of be reduced to this very shallow state. A big, sigh escapes him.
I'll see you in the morning, Ragnar.
And begins to eat himself, and then stares out into the wasteland back towards the temple where, in the distance we can hear a demonic screech, echo throughout the valley, sort of foreshadowing what we are to see in the moments to come. I think we're going to call that scene closed. So, a very interesting plot twist, a very interesting development there. We did settle our new dream of glory, which was deal with the empty remnant. We sure did deal with him. We somehow connected with him, and now he's on our side, which is great. So that means we get to earn ourselves another advancement. So let's roll a d20. A number 3. Your past comes to help you. Well, we literally just had that moment happen in the scene. So how does the past... We'll have to think about that. We'll roll a table on that. The past comes to help us. So let's go back to... So now we have to think of a new dream of glory, right? And we also have to... So the dream of glory is we have to find Bromir, right? That is the dwarven teenager. That was our next promise that we made. That was our promise that we made to one of the dwarven prisoners. So that's going to be our next dream of glory. We have our acquired advancements. We just earned number... I found that I can kind of make this go out of order, right? If I go down. Yeah. And then if I say 3. Yeah. Oh, 3, 5. Maybe I can't. I thought I could. Oh, no, wait. 3. If I undo typing again? Yeah. 3. Watch me wrestle with Microsoft OneNote. 3. This is 5, 8. There we go. Yeah. Our past comes to help us. Okay, so would have been cooler if we rolled a new upgrade to one of our stats or something, but I'll take what I can get. Let's go back to our sparks, and let's roll some ideas. We got a 4 and a 3, which is redemption. And then we're gonna roll 2 and a 5. Negotiate redemption? Oh, I kind of feel like I know where this is going. Okay. But, okay. Because negotiate redemption to me sounds like what we're talking about, where we're trying to restore the mind of Ragnar. But negotiate, you know, implies that we're negotiating with the witches, because the witches are the ones that gave Ragnar and Duragrim this sort of unlife. But what must Duragrim do to negotiate? What is... Let's go to... There's a complication table. So in fiction... but this is more, I think a spark might be more befitting this. What must Duragrim do? Did I just roll the same thing again, 2 and a 4? No friends. Okay. 4 and a 3. I feel like I keep retrieve friends. Okay. Negotiate redemption, retrieve friends. Okay. I feel like I know what is happening here. I just have to roll a question on the Oracle. Because I think that's gonna largely determine where we're going next. So the past is coming to help us. That means the witches, I think, are going to be a part of this next part of the story. Now, through the witches, we are negotiating redemption. We are negotiating the healing of Ragnar's mind. And in order to do that, we have to retrieve friends. What this sounds like to me is that the witches need us to go get someone or something important to them so that they will help us in restoring Ragnar's mind. The question that I have, we know the demons take prisoners, right? Are the prisoners at the temple or are they not? Because if they're not at the temple, that is like another side quest that we have, which is complicated, given that we are already trying to save Bromir at the temple. If they're not at the temple, if they are at the temple, that sort of, you know, makes things a little easier. We're gonna say, to use the Oracle, roll a die given your current situation. When in doubt, use a D6. Okay. So, great and mighty Oracle. Is there any chance, narratively speaking, that the friends that we need to retrieve on behalf of the Witches of the Eclipse, the Sisters of the Eclipse, are they at the same temple where Bromir is? 4. Yes, but... Okay. I feel like I have to write this in the quest section because there is some complicated stuff happening here. Some complicated threads being developed. Okay. So serve family. So it turns out Ragnar was our old housecarl. We were able to reconnect with part of his... with part of his old self. Okay. And we gained ourselves... gained follower. Gained a follower. Right? Now, we do know all this stuff is happening. Our past is coming to help us, so we're negotiating redemption with the witches. And now we know that their prisoner is also at the temple. But there's a but. But there's a but. Witches hostages are at the temple. But, and I'm gonna roll once more on the sparks. 5 and 5. Oh, I need the sparks are over here. 5 and 5. Ooh, a deception. That one I definitely rolled before. 2 and a 4. Ooh. Escape. Deception. Escape. Deception. Okay. But escape deception. So what am I hearing from they're at the temple, but what I'm hearing is that the witches are actually posing as demonic cultists. So they're not prisoners. They're currently in disguise. They're doing some what's the word? Not reconnaissance. They're currently doing some espionage here. The witches are actually posing as demonic cultists. So we need to help them out of the temple without raising suspicion. How about that? That's a wild plot twist, but hey. Okay. So, I guess we have a new dream of glory then. Because now the dream of glory is not going to be find Bromir, although that is on the docket. The current dream of glory is locate witches in disguise. Oh my gosh. Duragrim just can't catch a break, can he? Okay, so we're armed with a lot of new information now, so now we have to sort of contextualize it in the narrative, right? So, Duragrim, you know, finds himself in a surprisingly restful slumber, right? His memory is patchwork, his thoughts are hazy, but I think being exposed to Ragnar stirs some old thoughts that are, you know, swimming in the back of his brain and give him some pleasant dreams that sort of harken back to a simpler time when he was a lord of Hazunrul at the height of the Dwarfhold's power, when things were easier, when his wife and his daughter were alive, when he and his brother were on better terms. You know, there are images of feasts and of games and, you know, firelight chats and by a grand hearth, you know, just things that you know, luxuries that Duragrim has not been able to experience for some time. And as he's experiencing these emotions and these images, there are things every once in a while that feel a little off, you know? Like he'll be experiencing a memory that he kind of remembers, but he'll get the feeling as though he's being watched, you know? And he'll turn his shoulder in his dream, and out of the corner of his eye, he'll see a dark shadow, which sort of flickers out of sight, and there's a strange, like, gust of cold air that blows from that direction, and in the back of his mind, he hears sort of a gleeful as like it disappears, and he'll find himself in a new scene, and he'll be experiencing that moment. And in the crowd, you know, as he's watching like a great oration happen in like the halls of the dwarf holds, like in the crowd, he'll see a few oddly familiar black-robed figures, right, who are amongst the onlookers who don't register in his original memory. And when he holds his hand up to, you know, squint and like get a better picture of who they are, there's suddenly more gusts of wind as they disappear, and all around him he hears sort of like, you know, echoing inside of his mind, almost as if some other forces is inserting itself into his dreams and his memories. And there's one moment where he is sitting at a long table, you know, surrounded on all ends by his friends and his family. You know, perhaps seated amongst the people at this table is Ragnar, healthier, haler, hardier, you know, way before his corruption and his dissolution of thought. And Duragrim is sort of smiling, and he looks down at something on the table, right? Perhaps it is, because he was eating last scene, perhaps it is, you know, he's conjuring a memory of like a meal of his, a favorite meal of his. And as he like reaches down to enjoy some of it, he puts his hand down, and there's nothing there. The table is bare, right? And as he lifts his head upward, the halls are now suddenly empty, with the exception of Ragnar, who is seated. But although he looks as though he remembers, right, in his younger days, in his glory days, he is now just sitting there with that same idle, you know, sort of mindless grin that the current Ragnar, the corrupted Ragnar, has on his face. And Duragrim, you know, looks to the left, looks to the right excitedly. What sorcery is this? And sort of like blinks, and as he looks back towards Ragnar is now not what he remembers. He is not Ragnar in his armor, you know, with his beard of, let's say, fiery red, right? But now gray and tangled. His flesh now blue and deadened. And there's more sort of like laughter around him as he's beginning to understand what is happening. Duragrim sort of takes his fist and slams them down on the table and stands and like pushes the chair out from underneath his back. You listen here, you witches! You fiends! I have words to trade with ye. Show yourselves! Quit this foul deception! And is like yelling and all this whatnot. And as he opens his eyes once again from shouting into the ether, now seated at the table amongst, you know, where all of his compatriots and his family and his friends used to be, are now the Sisters of the Eclipse, right? So they are these, we've never really seen their faces yet. We've seen sort of shadowy glimpses underneath their hoods, but we know they're sort of leather-skinned, hag-like dwarves, ancient, inscrutable, knowledgeable, dressed in black cloaks that, as their namesake implies, they're sort of wearing fine silvered talismans and totems that are forged and carved to resemble various phases of the moon, right? They all sort of are sitting idly at the table and sort of like sort of like giggling to themselves as they now take seat with Duragrim in his mind. And I think at this point, the scene around them, right, the actual, what was once his like main hall, you know, the hearth, the stonework, I think even that has all disappeared. And it's just them sort of seated at this table floating in the middle of darkness, floating in the middle of nothingness, just a void, with Duragrim, the Sisters of the Eclipse, and Ragnar all seated here, with Ragnar just staring glumly into the vacuous space of his mind, right? As Duragrim finally, you know, reaches down, props the chair back up, takes a seat, and... Oh, thank you so much, Vinny, for the gift subs. I appreciate you. That is so kind. Oh, I love you too, Vin. I hope you're having fun as I talk to myself in dwarf tongue, right? But thank you so much. At this point, Duragrim sort of sidles up, sort of collecting himself. So, what do I owe this pleasure? He says with like no small amount of venom in his voice, as the witches all stare at him. You know, you can't really see their faces from underneath their hoods, but you can see like these faint pinpricks of like non-blinking points of light, right, that are underneath these like dark hoods, as they just stare in Duragrim's direction.
Why, Duragrim, our visits are not so unwelcome, are they?
You know, another cacophony of laughter.
I don't take kindly to your jokes, witches. You visit me on this night, a night of calm minds, of pleasant dreams. You come here with reason, so speak plainly or leave me be. We simply come to see the progress of our most esteemed remnant, our servant, our champion.
Another, titters around the table as they trade laughter between each other.
I have marched my way to this cursed and besotted temple on your behalf. This burning band of Broldha that you have tasked me to retrieve for ye, it will be found. There have just been certain complications.
Duragrim, grumbles under his breath.
Complications, problems, issues.
The witches all whisper and sort of cavort amongst each other.
Certainly nothing that a remnant, a warrior, such as yourself, cannot overcome.
I should say a warrior, a demon slayer. They always have to speak in threes. Cannot overcome.
It will be dealt with. It's just I have come across a great many souls in need of assistance here. Some I am more familiar with than others.
He says as he casts a long gaze over towards Ragnar, or the shadow of Ragnar, who sits at the table, almost not even recognizing that the witches are even present in the scene. As they all sort of turn their heads idly towards Ragnar, staring off into the infinite distance, and then pull their heads back towards Duragrim.
Aye. Strange whisperings of your past. Even stranger crossroads. Crossroads, crisscross, crisscross.
As Duragrim nods his head.
I find myself indebted to a few of my kinsmen in the wastes. There is a boy I am to save, and the soul of an old friend.
He looks back towards Ragnar.
That I would see salvaged, if it can be managed. Ragnar was a good man, an honorable man. He does not deserve the fate that has befallen him at your hands. At our hands? We gave this Ragnar eternal life, eternal life, eternal life. A chance at redemption, 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 revenge, revenge, revenge,
They all echo.
and yet he was the one who proved unfit for the task. Too weak. No resolve.
They all whisper back and forth. As Duragrim slams his hands against the table once again.
Do not speak of him with your wretched tongues, witches. I knew Ragnar. Strong of soul and stout of heart was he. And he fought, I'm sure. He fought the very hells themselves. I have seen stronger, more fearsome warriors fall to smaller threats. I know that he fought valiantly. He drank your sordid potions to help him survive this hell that has been brought to us. And for serving you faithfully, his mind was stolen from him. How? How is this fair?
Oh, Mochi! Thank you for wiggling into the chat. And the witches all seem to look amongst each other and shrug their shoulders.
We do not deal in fairness, Duragrim. Fairness?
Fairness! They all laugh.
What we deal in is results. The remnants were created to battle the demons. The potions we gifted to the remnants were their aid in felling the hellspawn. It was their choice to live this new life they were bestowed, to use the tools that we had gifted them. If they were misused, if they were mishandled, that is their business and their fates. For that, abuse of power is their own.
As there's a cold silence, that falls over the sort of liminal space that they're all inhabiting in this dreamscape. Duragrim lowers his head as he understands there is a level of truth to what they speak. Duragrim was given the same powers, the same tools, the same deal, and yet he has survived longer, he has relied on the potions less, he has retained more of himself throughout the ages. He knows what they speak is somewhat true, however, he also knows how brutal the wastelands are, and even people far more powerful than him, more resourceful than him, have found themselves twisted and cursed to the same sorry state. And so then Duragrim sort of takes a deep breath.
There must be something that can be done. You have made these magics. You have brewed these elixirs which have stolen his thoughts. Surely there is a way you can undo it. There must be a way. I do not ask this even for myself. What memories I've lost, what pieces of myself have been stolen from me, I contest you not over, but for Ragnar, who has already shed so much of himself. I beseech you, what can be done? Tell me, and I will do it.
And the witches consider this for a moment. The sisters, they like their bargains, they like their deals, they like their promises. As they almost look to each other, and you can hear whispers, echo throughout this cavernous nothingness, and you know that they are whispering to each other, but the language is unintelligible, right? It's sort of like in an ancient tongue, not dwarven, not even from, not even demon tongue. This is some far older elder speech from that only, the spellcasters of their ilk would trade amongst themselves. When finally all of their whispers, almost as quickly as they came, whiff out of the room.
You would then accept another task. A second task. A task for us?
They all whisper.
Aye. If it means that Ragnar's mind can be spared, I will claim for you this burning band, and whatever new and strange request your sick and twisted minds have forged together.
And you can almost feel the smile underneath their hoods, even if you can't see it, as they all nod their heads and look to each other for a moment, and then back to Duragrim.
Deep within the temple that you now travel to recover the burning band of Broldha, more of our ilk, sisters of the Eclipse, members of our coven, they hide. Long have they lived in secret amongst the Hellspawn and their dark worshippers, trying to understand the fell magics that they bring into the dwarf holds and beyond. But the time of their observation is soon to end, and they will need to relinquish their hidden posts. However, the Hellspawn have long suspected that there are defectors and traitors in their midst. Surely, if they caught wind that our sisters were trying to make a hasty exit, they would try to enact some sort of vengeance. We cannot have that happen. The knowledge that they have gleaned from these demon worshippers are simply too valuable to forsake. And so, Duragrim fell deep. Your new task is thus: enter this temple, even if it should take you to the hell-touched and fire-scorched caverns beneath its foundations, and retrieve our sisters. Ensure that they find their way back to the surface, back to where they can find themselves in the company of their good coven. And if you do this, if you successfully ensure their safety, then, and only then, will the mind of your esteemed Ragnar be repaired.
They let that statement weigh on Duragrim as he considers his tasks at hand. Every time he goes into this temple, it just becomes more complicated, and it gets closer to being mauled by an army of demons. But he said what he said. Ragnar is precious to him. This memory, the possibility of restoring his friend is too important. And so, you know, there's a huff of cold air that escapes his nostrils. You make bold claims of my abilities and drive a hard bargain for services rendered, but if that is what I must do, Sisters of the Eclipse, then I name it done. And the sisters, once again, you can feel the smiles beneath their hoods. Then consider this deal brokered, Duragrim. Do not disappoint us. And Duragrim, you know, quirks an eye, hearing sort of that failed threat, wondering what they might mean, what might be, you know, the punishment or the toll exacted upon him if this task cannot be done. Raises his hand. Wait, what do you mean by this? What veiled threats do you speak of? But before, you know, he has a chance to contest them over this, the entire dark space once again fills with laughter as the witches sort of like rise up from the table, and you see Ragnar almost immediately go ragdoll, just go limp in the chair, to the point that the chair itself just collapses underneath him and like falls to the floor. The chairs that they were standing in also fall to the ground as they just begin to rise into the air, chanting in that unintelligible ancient tongue, Ure suru masiatu ure nunes, just sort of like getting further and further into the air, into the blackness. And instinctively, Duragrim, I think, rushes over to Ragnar and like grabs him by the shoulders and shakes him, says, Ragnar, what have they done to you? Ragnar, wake! And like looks upward. What have you done to him? And they're just like laughing and raising further up. And it's almost like this funhouse mirror effect, right? Where even though they're surrounded by nothingness, the entire space seems to stretch and bend, and like reality warps around them as they just seem to get further up, and it makes like this cylindrical void, you know, like between them and him, as he's just shouting up into the ether, what have you done to him? Looking back down, Ragnar! And then, you know, snap to Duragrim awakens in real life to him grabbing Ragnar, the empty, forsaken shoulders, you know, who he told to rest just hours before, the night before, and is now shaking that Ragnar, yelling, Ragnar, waken! And Ragnar's eyes are wide. He's already awake, but, you know, he's operating on that sort of feral mindset, so his hands are just sort of raised up and, like, uselessly battering and, like, pushing away at Duragrim, not wanting to harm him now that he recognizes that he's a member of Clan Feldeep and that he's sworn to serve him, but also trying to, like, push him away, and he just keeps, you know, mumbling back, Serve Feldeep! And is, like, pushing back against him as Duragrim is shaking him, Ragnar, what are they? And, like, finally collects his thoughts. Oh, my. I'm sorry, lad. And, like, takes a step back, his hands are raised. I don't know
What has come over me? I'm sorry.
And Ragnar just sort of like puts his hands back over his chest and like scooches up against a rock.
Serve Feldeep.
He just sort of murmurs once again as if saying, "It's okay. No need to be sorry. I'm serving Feldeep."
Serve Feldeep.
And Duragrim sort of like puts a hand to his head, which is now thrumming in pain and would be broken out into cold sweat if he had the ability to perspire, and just says,
Yes. Serve Feldeep. Wait here, will you? I have some business to attend to.
As he looks down into the camp, he sees now that many of the dwarves are packing their things and beginning to leave, right? And this strikes him as odd, as none of the dwarves have spoken with him about where they're going as after he freed them. And so he rushes down the hillside to meet with them and says, "Hey, what are you lot doing? Leaving without saying goodbye?" And a lot of them just sort of lift their heads and then sort of dejectedly look downward and continue gathering their things. "What? Demon spawn cut your tongues out in the middle of the night? None have the nerve to speak to me. Tell me, where do you flee? Where do you..." And like is beginning to make demands when like a voice interrupts his barrage of accusations. "They're taking their leave of you, Duragrim." And he turns around and he sees, what was her name? To look back at my other. Bromir was the... Hilda! Hilda was the name of the dwarven mother. So we see Hilda, who is now the only one sitting by the camp with, where she was stationed and slept the night with, like, some of her things scattered about. And Duragrim, like, puts his hands on his hips and, like, marches back towards Hilda. "They're taking their leave of me, but I take it." And Hilda finishes for him. "No, I'm not. I'm staying." As she raises her eyes up, like, with, like, a sort of knowing intensity. "You owe me my son, my boy. I can't leave until I know his fate." And Duragrim nods. "Aye. I still do intend to find my way into that temple to see what has become of Bromir. And if he can be recovered, I will. But tell me, what has become of your fellows? Where do they go?" And Hilda sort of shakes her head and looks back down towards the campfire and sort of idly pokes it. I promised I wouldn't say. I promised them I wouldn't tell you." And, you know, Duragrim gives her a confused look. "And why won't you share this with me?" And she looks back towards where the fight had taken place in the camp between Duragrim and Morgath the other night. There's still fresh blood on the stones where the duel had taken place. "Morgath was a lying bastard and a traitor and was going to swear himself to demons, but words that he spoke did stir a truth and a fear in the hearts of these dwarf folk. Duragrim fell deep. You are a remnant. You are a servant of witches. You are a member of this Eclipse cult. I did not swear any oaths to a cult," you know, Duragrim goes in. "You didn't need to swear any oath, Duragrim. You were raised by their magics.
You are under their sway. Your mind, your soul is not entirely your own, and they know that. And they don't trust it. And they have no reason to. I don't believe that the remnants are all evil. I've heard great tale of how they rid the world of demon spawn, but just so they are extensions of another magical, unknown force, these witches. We don't know why you were raised. You don't know why you were raised. What if they tell you where their homes are, where they hide from the demon spawn and try to make out their meager lives in these wastes? And you learn that. And then even with your best intentions, someday these doomsday witches, these sisters of the eclipse, they reveal their true intent. And it is ill for them, Duragrim. What if?
Duragrim is insulted and shocked, but there's also a part of him who really can't deny the truth in her words. As he lowers his head.
I thought that after everything, after escaping the temple, after reminding them of the strength of the stone, after,
And Hilda raises her hand.
you've done a great deal for them, Duragrim. Believe me, they do not make this decision idly. There were some that protested, it is true. But you know as well as I that these days, the old loyalties of the dwarf holds, of the height of Haz and Roll, the links of these chains are thinner, they are weaker, they are splintered. Trust cannot be so freely given. There's too much on the line. There's too much at stake. I'd like to believe that you are a good man, but I cannot say that for certain for the people who have given your body life again, who own it in some strange fraction, and they can't either. They're just looking out for themselves. I'm sorry.
And Duragrim, looks over his shoulder towards the dwarves now, who have mostly moved camp, and some are sort of trading long and pained glances in Duragrim's direction, but continue moseying back into the wastes, all the same. As he lets out a breath of defeat.
I can't blame them. As much as I wish it different, I can't fault them for wanting to keep their kin safe. I might have done the same, were the roles reversed. I know it's hard, Duragrim, but I don't know. Perhaps you can find them again someday, on better terms, freer terms. It would be nice if more of the old dwarf hold could raise glasses together again. Aye, it would.
And a moment of silence hangs between them for a moment as... Oh, excuse me, a burp just attacked my throat. Very, very polite of me. As Duragrim watches as the rest of them disappear towards the horizon line, swallowed by the red sun, which is raising in the distance, as dust storms begin to kick up around them.
Well, I set off back for the temple to find Bromir. I don't expect you to follow. It will be dangerous, but...
And she nods her head.
I'll be here. I'll watch your camp. Hide it as best I can. Make sure that what remains of your supplies stay safe.
Duragrim gives a nod and thanks, and says,
If I don't return in a few days' time...
And then Hilda closes her eyes.
I know. That means you're lost. If you're lost, Bromir's lost. I won't sacrifice myself in woe if you do not return. I'll leave. Maybe find my way back to the caravan. To the other survivors. Good. Glad to see we're of the same mind.
Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, because we needed a weapon for Ragnar, Duragrim turns to leave to gather the rest of his things for his expedition when Hilda says, "Wait!" And, Duragrim turns around and she reaches into her pack and a moment later sort of reveals an aged but well forged sort of hand axe, that probably has the maker's mark of their family smith, on the side, and says, "This was to be Bromir's. He let me hold it when we were in captivity, in case something were to happen to me. He'd rather me be armed than himself. Belonged to his father. If you are to go and save my boy, and I cannot join ye, then at least I can give you a token of my appreciation. Perhaps it will help spare him. I hope." And she, holds the axe up towards Duragrim, who takes it and, in an almost prayerful gesture, family ties, forging of steel, dwarven craft, these are all things that are very sacred and very well honored amongst the dwarven people. And so being handed this piece of history, this weapon, this very precious thing to Hilda and their family, he treats it with the due reverence that he believes it deserves. And after giving it that moment of silence, sort of holding it up, almost like pressing his head to the haft, the handle, communing with the steel in a silent way, he looks back down to Hilda. "If demon's flesh is to be rent, and hellish ichor to be spilled, then I swear to you, this axe will spill it." And Hilda gives a bolstered smile and nods her head. "I'm happy to hear it." And then she looks back towards where the red sun has now pretty much cleared. The horizon line is now beginning to raise into the ash-stained sky, and looks back to Duragrim. "Every moment wasted is another shift towards peril for Bromir, for my boy." And Duragrim, understanding her sentiment, "No more time wasted.
no more words left to speak. As he begins to turn his back and march, Hilda calls after him. The stones be with you, Duragrim Feldeep. And he stops for a moment and looks behind his shoulder. Stones be with you, Mother Hilda. I will return with your boy, or I will die trying. And Hilda says, death to you is not the same as death for Romir. And as he doesn't respond to her outright, almost to himself. He marches away, understanding what she means by, you know, the urgency behind her request, but thinking about Ragnar and the hollowed, empty, maddened state that he has been left in, you know, under his breath to himself, he says, "You're right. My fate is far worse than death." You know, he sort of grumbles to himself as he marches back towards camp and prepares for the next adventure to come. So in that moment, he arms Ragnar with the axe that Hilda had given him from their family, right? So now we have a reason for Ragnar, the assist character, to now have a proper weapon. Has Hilda's hand axe, which is a D6. And yeah, I think that is a pretty good moment to end this session, right? We've dealt with, we've located the witches in disguise. We've dealt with Ragnar. We found out who Ragnar was. We made a deal with the witches to help restore his mind. We are now heading back into the temple so we can start the next session with Duragrim and Ragnar sneaking their way back into the temple to see what dangers lie in store for them so they can save Bromir and try to locate the witches who are in disguise and ferry them out of the temple before it is too late, before they're discovered. And I think that's where we're going to end. There's a lot going on that session. There's a lot of twists and turns. So I'm going to go back to just chatting. Thank you, everyone who has joined us for this session of Tales of the Burned Stones by Fire RPGs. As always, I should probably turn off my my little side monitor here, else I'm going to stare at myself. Thank you for joining us for another session of Tales of the Burned Stones by Fire RPG, a solo-friendly RPG. The links in both the Twitch description and the YouTube will allow you to find the game. You can download it for yourself. It is free, and that is awesome. I have been your host and Dungeon Master, Wolfe Scott, and this is Level 1 Adventuring. What is Level 1 Adventuring? It is a TTRPG and RPG-focused stream channel. We play tons of games, solo RPGs like the games you've seen here tonight, Tales of the Burned Stones. We also play big group role-playing games. We have an ongoing 5th edition D&D campaign, which usually runs Wednesdays. And I also play other games, Celasta, sometimes Magic the Gathering if I'm feeling bored and frisky. We got lots to see. Please follow us on all the socials if you want to keep up with all the episodes of former series and former episodes of this series. That's on YouTube. Join our Discord where we chat about all the games that we're going to play and share some memes. We're also going to play some D&D together there as a community very soon, so very exciting. Thank you to StreamLabs, Stream Audio, StreamSpell, Tabletop Audio, AI Twitch Bot, all of the services that make our Twitch stream more engaging and interesting for our chat to take place in. You are very much appreciated. And if you download any of these services to create your own stream, then we get a little kickback, so we thank you very much for that. And so I think that is all of my usual spiel. It has been a pleasure to see you. We will be playing something again tomorrow night. Honestly, I'm probably just going to keep playing Tales of the Burned Stones. I kind of want to get
I don't want to say get through as in like I want Tales of the Burnstones to end, but we're juggling so many playthroughs. I would love to like finish a playthrough so I can more dedicatedly, more specifically, start some new playthroughs, right? Because I've talked to some people about doing playthroughs of their games, but I'm like already in the middle of this one in Firelight, so I want to free some stories up. So I'm gonna try to burn through the rest of this Tales of the Burnstones playthrough, so we can experience other narratives. But having a lot of fun with the system in general. I think Breathless is really novel and it's really well suited to the solo RPG experience. I'm feeling very inspired. I want to write a rule set after interacting with all of these other RPGs. So keep your eye open for that, I guess, if I get inspired enough to do that. And all that being said, I hope you have a wonderful rest of your night. I will see you tomorrow for more Tales of the Burnstones. Wednesday, we're going to be doing something. I don't know if it's D&D yet. I have to double check our head count. I will keep you posted. But if it is not D&D, then it will be another story that we'll enjoy together. And for now, that's all. So drink water, be easy, be kind to yourself and to others. And until then, enjoy yourselves and adventure on. And I'm going to run this outro if I can find the outro button. We'll see you then.